The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Hello, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Carlos.
And it's a Friday, and we got a ton of stuff to talk about again, as usual.
As
Oh,
usual.
where do we begin?
Well, let's start with the story that I had broke at midnight 2 days ago, which was about the Amazon and they're not hiring the people of Fall River. And then, of course, on the 11th, which happens to be today, the Herald News breaks that City Councilor Dan Rigo raises concerns about construction jobs for Fall River residents at Amazon. Hey, Herald News, you got to wait a whole extra day? This is nothing new, but I did attempt to contact Amazon prior to this story, and Amazon never returns phone calls, and they have no comment. And I had spoken very clearly on the fact that there were non-disclosure agreements in place, and people are saying, oh, that's fine, that's fine. And I received a phone call yesterday from a supplier, and they couldn't get into too much about what was going on, and they have blah, 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 but they found it unfair, and what do you expect? Nobody in Fall River can handle this type of work. Nobody in Fall River can handle the volume that needs to happen. And I'm not saying that we had to have solely Fall River contractors or Fall River employees, okay? But the concrete's from a New Jersey company, okay? The blasting and the drilling is from Maine. The employees working the site aren't local, and the only one company that's local or semi-local is White, which is from Acushnet. But you know what? That doesn't matter. We're gonna bring our own people in. We're not gonna have our people out of work. But you can't work if you're from Fall River at the Amazon job. So,
Well, that's absolute baloney. People from Fall River can't handle it. We have trade unions in this city, and that locals that cover this city and this area that handle every conceivable trade. And, they don't have to get 100% of the work, but they should get some. It's absurd. And I want to, this little thing you downloaded here, this is a Herald News article, and it's got a picture. So let's see if we could handle this job, because you know what this picture is captioned? A worker uses a hammer in the construction of a wall system. So you're telling me we don't have anybody in Fall River that can use a hammer? Come on.
I don't know how many assaults were done with a hammer.
We've got the carpenters union, we've got the laborers union, and I'm sure they can all use hammers. And it's absolute crap. And let me tell you something, Mr. Fiola. Your non-disclosure agreements are there for a reason. We said on this show there would be very few, if any, Fall River jobs with Amazon in the plant and even during the construction phase. And I'm going to remind everybody, just in case you forgot, that this happens every time. All the people that get the TIFs, and while we pay higher taxes to subsidize them, they all do this. I'll remind you a while back when we went up to the industrial park to picket Matuk, because Matuk was using all outside contractors. And the day we picketed, they hired 2 Fall River contractors. So, again, this is another scam. And Amazon, give me a break. They don't even treat their employees well. There's been all kinds of there are all kinds of shows about how they just abuse their employees. They're a predatory company. All Amazon's about is the bottom line. They're like the guy who raised the cancer drug, 10,000% because he bought the company. They're a predatory company. They go around the country looking for all the deals and pathetic places like Fall River that give them everything for free to come here. And then when they suck this area dry and we say, well, you got everything for free for 10 years. You want to pay 10 cents worth of taxes? And they go, see you later. We're out of here. And they go to another place. And you know something? Then you got the next thing that we're going to talk about, but we can stay on this one. But Mr. Fiola saying how they're attracting other companies. Well, Mr. Fiola, you don't even have to write this speech because you've said it before with other companies that came here. Because you've been slinging the crap for 20 years. And we've seen what's happened to the employment rate in Fall River. Nothing. You're full of crap. And this has got to stop. And don't say it can't be done, because in Providence, Rhode Island, when it had its renaissance during the Cianci administration, and Buddy wasn't the most honest politician in the world, we're not going to sugarcoat that. But the fact is, one thing that kept Buddy in was every labor union in Providence loved him, because anybody that came into Providence that wanted to do anything in Providence, the first thing Buddy said was, go meet with the unions. He made sure that Providence people were put to work in every phase of a business. And that's what resurrected Providence. That's what created the Renaissance in Providence, putting their people to work. The Office of Economic Destruction has been a dismal failure for 20 years, and they continue to be a dismal failure. And all the bull crap in the world from Kenny Fiola is not going to change it. So that's my little tirade. So
Yeah, but Chip, you're absolutely right. And the Office of Economic Development, or Disaster, or Destruction, the TIF Board, and numerous mayors said, we can't require them to hire people from Fall River. We can't require them to use local contractors. Wait a minute. That's why it's a tax incentive package. There are strings attached. But Kenny says, the TIF board says, the mayors have said, oh, but we can't do that because then they'll go somewhere else. Well, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was last week, about a company, Amazon, who was in another city in town that was there for 10 years, and Amazon said, oh, well, it no longer meets our requirements, and we are now moving. This city turned around and gave them everything, doubled the offer that Fall River gave them, and they still said, we're gone, bye-bye, we're leaving, we're not going to change our mind. And you have to say, wait a minute, why? Because guess what? With Amazon leaving, the jobs that they quasi-created through agencies, because they don't really hire anybody, are gone. That city is now looking at bankruptcy. They're looking at devastation. And it's amazing how that seems to coincide with the opening of other warehouses of the same size in other communities. But we're not going to go there. But it's very interesting because this whole Amazon project was a go from the beginning, because this governor, Governor Baker, has lynched his entire initiative on Amazon, and Amazon's paying for it. After all, I read you the quotes from their vice president of policy, public policy, and he says, oh yeah, we need these people. Are you going to use any of these companies? No. All they want is cheap labor and cheap sites. And we're going to find out when this is another robotic warehouse what really will happen. Because as we know, we never get what we bargained for.
You're right.
in Fall River.
And the other thing, CJ, is that everybody has to start, really, really looking at these things. Isn't it amazing that every one of these things normally comes with a non-disclosure clause?
Yeah.
So, you know, but that's so they don't have to tell us anything. Like this, if people didn't go up there and check the plates, and they knew they weren't working, but they were building, and somebody didn't check, like with Matuk, we'd never know. But what do? And they go, we have to bring them here. Why? What good do they do this community on a scale? Let's put this on a scale. They don't pay any taxes, so they don't contribute to the community in the tax base. They're going to give us, what, a few jobs? Who knows in the warehouse? If we get 100 jobs in Fall River, and that's the other thing. Oh, they will not tell us, and we can't ask them to tell us exactly how many Fall River residents they hired. Well, guess what? If you want a TIF, I'd put the language in that Fall River companies have to be part of the bid process, and Fall River people have, a percentage has to be employed in order to get the TIF, because you're not paying a damn dime in taxes. We're paying the freight for this stuff because we continue to get these things. And I'm going to quote, he's still city councilor, but Dan Rigo. He said, New Hampshire, Maine, New Jersey plates. That's a quote, Rigo said. And in another quote, I mean, come on, they're all from out of state. It's just not right. And it happens all the time. Drive across the bridge to Somerset Lodge whenever there's a major construction job around here, and you will see nothing but out-of-state plates, because they come here for months and they live in the motels while they work. And while Fall River people and people from the greater Fall River area go to the union halls every day and sit on a bench and wait for a job, and they get nothing.
And you know, what really makes me laugh is, you know, because I had said that in the article that I wrote, and I did comment on the fact that it was Maine, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and all out-of-state areas, but not even Providence companies were chosen. And the thing is that these companies are probably paying for these hotel rooms too. So don't try to, you know, as you always say, urinate on my head and tell me it's raining. Because you know what? I see the writing on the wall. And somebody actually came to me and said, you don't understand the inner workings of the Fall River Office of Economic Development. You know, you have this perception that they're not doing anything, or that they're just giving everything away. But there's a plan, and there's a lot of workings and stuff that goes on. And do I think there aren't a lot of workings going on? Absolutely not. I mean, Carlos and I were in Government Center 2 days ago, and we saw the inner workings coming out of important meetings that they had to approve, you know, the redevelopment authority. We saw the people from the redevelopment authority leaving because they had to approve the pot farm out in out in the biopark area. And when we look at that, we say, is this a bad thing? Is this a good thing? We don't know, because we're not told. They don't tell us everything. They give it glorified names like Project Diamond, Project BS, Project Poop. I mean, you know, and we don't know what's going on. Carlos, you were there. You saw the people leaving. And when they saw my face, did you see their faces change? And did you see how fast they walked out of the building? You know, I mean, Carlos, you saw them walk right by us. Come on. Yeah, I mean, you have employees that I'm talking to, because Carlos and I had a meeting there, and they're going like this. I mean, they don't want to be seen.
When I was growing up, we was bad luck to see somebody dressed in black. So when they see you, it's a bad day.
It's like a black cloud, a giant black cloud. But you know something? When they do tell us something, it's a lie or a half-truth or a manipulation of fact. And that's all we ever get. You know, the fact is, Fiola says that development attracting other companies. Yeah, it's the construction companies from Maine, Pennsylvania, you know, New Hampshire, New Jersey. That's who they're attracting. They're not attracting any Fall River businesses. You know, it's all baloney. And the reality is that, you know, we get nothing out of this except a pack of lies, and we're driving this city deeper and deeper into a position where it's going to collapse. Because, you know, even when we have an opportunity to get a little bit, we get nothing. And we've had not a year, not 2 years, but decades of this from the Office of Economic Development. And all we get is baloney and the manipulation of facts, and
We don't even get breadcrumbs.
We get this rhetoric about this is great, we're going to do this. And, you know, that segues me into another issue that, well, the Messiah, the man who walks on water, the man who has the most, probably one of the greatest inputs on the city of Fall River's business and doesn't live here, the Messiah Million, gave this impassioned speech on how we have to keep Mayo-Brown because we're doing so well. Well, guess what? The MCAS results shows something completely different. Another pack of lies. We listened to all the political hacks. We saw the bank president whose wife's a principal. We saw all the political hacks and all the shills like Million march up and say that Mayo-Brown is the second coming of Christ when it comes to the school department. Well, I say that since she's become the superintendent of schools, we've had a downward spiral, that we have more and more people and more employees within the school department dissatisfied, and the statistics speak for themselves. CJ, you and I were discussing this. Why don't you tell us about this?
We have one school, which I think is interesting because they call it a commendation school. And it's very interesting to see that. But when we look at the numbers, how many remember CUS is the model? It's the form. It's the thing to follow. The nation is following it because it took it to a level 1 school. Well, guess what? They're not level 1 anymore. They're level 2. So obviously the system isn't working too well. And the funny thing is that the middle school system has been proven to be ineffective. And in school systems which have a K through 8 protocol, as opposed to a K through 5 and then a 6th, 7th, and 8th middle school system, produce better performing students than here. And we did this, and I fought this when they did the major schools. But you know, it's interesting to see that we look at the school system, and while we have many schools which are level, well, not many schools, but we have a few schools which are level 1, the Viveris, the Frank Sylvia, and the Doran School, which worked very hard to get to that point because they were very underperforming. We have schools like the Henry Lord, which we don't have enough data because they were a level 5 school and they closed it. And then a year later they reopened it because now we have no data on it. And when we start looking at that, then we see the Talbot, which is a level 3. You've got, as I said earlier, CUS, which is a 2, Laterno, which is a level 3, Fonseca, which is a level 3, Watson, which is a level 4 again, okay, and Durfee, which is a level 3. The Green, which is a level 2. The Morton, which is a level 3. I mean, and as a whole, the Fall River school system is a level 4 school system. Hello, wake up.
Yeah, well, you know what they do when you know, obviously the school system is failing in, you know, because when you look at the average, you know, and you know, it's the level 1 schools. What they do is they move the students around like
Right.
Chinese checkers. So you get a level 4, so you move all of the not underperforming students to another school, and then the performance level comes up, and then they begin to move them around. As you said, you had CUS that they said was the model, and now they've moved some of those students around, and that's what they do. But you listen to the propaganda, Mayo-Brown. They begin to use percentages and percentiles. Well, now they're better. They're outperforming 41% of the schools. Well, 41% of schools isn't even half. Well, I mean, what the hell? Come on, Meg. Jesus, you're the superintendent of schools. You can't do math? 41% isn't good. The last time I took a test and got a 41, it had an F on it. So you're outperforming 41% of the schools? That means you're not outperforming 59% of the schools.
Right.
So it's like, God, it's just, they actually have the audacity to say these things. And they say it so often, as
People believe it.
as my friend Goebbels once said, if you tell a big enough lie often enough, people will begin to believe it.
That's right.
They just use figures to just absolutely, just completely distort the facts. The fact is, this school system is a disaster.
Hey, and Barnstable's meeting today, an executive session on who to hire. So they may be hiring Meg Mayo-Brown because she's so wonderful. Maybe the propaganda that was being spewed to keep her was to actually pass the buck over to Barnstable. But, you know, Carlos, I have to talk to you about this. 2 of your schools in your neighborhood, the Fonseca is level 3.
And
The
Watson.
Watson is level 4. Are you proud of this?
No.
Are you proud of this? Is this what you wanted in your neighborhood? Is this what you want from your school system?
No, and the Watson for the past I don't know how many years has been that level and is not being able to move it, you know, you know, we have, and they can blame the kids, they can blame the teachers, they can blame whatever they want. I think the system is not working, period. And that goes for all the schools. The system is, the numbers are not matching. The numbers are being told wrong, and it's not the first time that I'm being mentioned this. I don't trust the numbers, and the numbers, you know, is being just fake numbers, just to make us believe. It's like when the city comes up with a budget, you know. Yeah. We're going to put the 2 and 2 together so people will think that we're doing okay.
Yeah.
But we're going to hide the bad numbers so at least we're going to show that we're doing good. The school department is now working under this administration, school administration. And that's it. We need to move on. It's not working. And the reason it's not working too is because it became politics. Politics being, you know, she's been keeping that job for that long because she's a political person.
Yeah.
You know, she plays politics with our school department.
No, she's playing politics with our children. And Chip, what's your famous quote about the numbers?
Yep. Figures don't lie, but liars can figure.
Exactly, and this is what
you know,
we have.
While we're on that, let's put this in proper perspective, because Carlos, you're 100% right. You know, there's no excuse because the Watson School has gone through a generation of students. So you're not going to tell me that every single person that walks into the Watson School, every new class that walks into the Watson School, that the majority of those children are underperforming children. You can't tell me that. Not at that age. You know, and you can't tell me that the teachers are that ineffective, because I believe we have a lot of good teachers in this city, and if there's an underperforming teacher, that should be addressed. But let's look at the system as a whole, because let's not look at the tree, let's look at the forest. This system will only be a good system when all schools begin to rise. You know, this con job of every time you look at these numbers, they're fundamentally the same. You got a bunch of level 3s, 1 or 2 level 4s, 1 or 2 level 1s, and they move around for the most part because they maneuver students around to manipulate the data.
Chip.
And what we should have is every one of our schools should be moving toward being a level 1 school. And there should be a program to make sure, not moving people around to make the numbers, as you said, fit, because that's what they're doing. They're making the numbers fit for political expediency.
And-
I want to see a report from the state someday that says every single one of these schools has improved.
And-
Not one improved and the other one got worse.
And Chip, the numbers are right here. We comparing 4 communities. We comparing Somerset, Swansea, and Westport with Fall River. None of the other 3 have a level 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
They
you know,
all have level 1s and 2s.
Right.
So that means that the system they're using are working.
but also remember, those aren't comparable school systems because they're smaller, they're better funded, and they're in areas that are affluent. They have money. Why don't you compare the Fall River school system to New Bedford? Compare it to Lowell. Compare it to Lawrence. Compare it to cities and towns of like size and funding, and see if we're comparable. Because you know what? We don't have that report. And I'm going to get those numbers because I want to see, because if those schools are doing better than Fall River, then Fall River's the problem. Because you're not going to tell me that the students that walk into Watson and the teachers that walk into Watson immediately become stupid. Is there a black hole above the building that sucks the intelligence out of it? I know there's one over Fall River that does that.
Well, you know, granted the demographics are different in urban cities, but the fact is, you know, the comparison should be valid, should be similar cities, urban areas with a similar demographic. But that still doesn't relieve the system of the burden of trying to get better. The fact is that we are not looking at educational excellence here. We're looking at manipulation of data, and we have a school budget in excess of $100 million. It's not that we're underfunding this school system. We've got all Mayo-Brown's crew is making in excess of $100,000. All these principals, all these administrators that she hires that have to be loyal to her.
Don't forget the dean of students.
The dean of students, the dean of the COO of the middle schools, and all these fancy titles. And what are they accomplishing? They're accomplishing nothing, because our school system, and you know something, if you're going to spend $100 million, we better show some damn results. Because as far as I'm concerned, you should throw about 65% of those administrators out the door, hire some teachers, and if you have to make the classrooms 5 students, put all the teachers in the classroom and teach the children, because that's what we're paying. That's what we should be paying $100 million for, not for you and your band of thieves to carpetbag the money and leave the city when you're done.
And like I say, the school department takes half of our budget. Half of our budget. That means that costs to educate 10,000 kids the same price that costs 90,000 people to survive on the city. That's how I compare. 10,000 to 80,000 right now.
But what gets me is that we have 2 charter schools in Fall River, which are performing better than the Fall River public school system, and they're doing it cheaper, with less money, and they're getting better results. So explain to me, superintendent, explain to me, Fall River School Committee, explain to me, Miss Panchley, because you're on finance, how they can do that better than
Stay angry.
Stay very angry. And remember, your children count. Make it happen.
See you next week.
See you next week.